A multi-billion-dollar duel is underway to be the front door of the internet.
The race starts today.
I'm sure you know about Microsoft's successor to Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge. But did you know that Edge is actually powered by Google? And it's not some sort of obscure connection either. The entirety of Edge is built on Chromium, which is the open source version of Chrome. When Google released Chromium, they were primarily aiming to help small developers and to support the open source community. But somehow, their biggest competitor has ended up adopting it themselves. And this isn't a temporary solution either. In fact, Microsoft has already tried to compete against Google. They of course had Internet Explorer, but the original version of Edge was also built on Microsoft's proprietary engine, Edge HTML, and their Chakra JavaScript engine. But this version of Edge got destroyed so badly in the marketplace that Microsoft finally threw in the towel and announced that they too would switch to Chrome. Since then, Microsoft has even gone as far as discontinuing the legacy version of Edge, and that itself was 2 years ago. So it doesn't seem like Microsoft will be returning to the browser engine space anytime soon. It's not just the browser space that they conceded on either. They also gave in on the backend side of things. Back in 2015, Microsoft ditched Windows and started using Linux for their backend infrastructure. Since then, Microsoft has even launched their own version of Linux. These two are likely Microsoft's most notable concessions, but this just scratches the surface. They also conceded in the smartphone space, the music streaming space, the Windows 8 space, the Smart Assistant space, and now even the AI space. Instead of trying to push an in-house version of ChatGPT, Microsoft has decided to embrace ChatGPT itself from the get-go. Clearly, Microsoft has done a lot of conceding and losing over the past decade. So, is this the end of Microsoft's mega monopoly? Are they going to end up as the next Cisco or Intel? Well, the answer is absolutely not. Microsoft has been doing a lot of public conceding, but internally, they are the strongest tech company in the world, and here's why. While Microsoft's approach may seem weak and pathetic at first glance, they're actually making all of the right choices. Here's the thing. Over the past 20 to 30 years, companies have gotten into this mindset that they have to be present in every aspect of your lives. Do you need to wake up early? You should be using an Apple alarm on your Apple iPhone. Do you need to work out? You should be using an Apple Watch to track your workout and AirPods to power your workout. Do you need to text your friends? You should be using iMessage. Do you need to video call your family? You should be using FaceTime. Do you just need to sleep? Well, you should be using an Apple Watch to track your sleep. This trend is not just apparent on the front end either. These companies want to control the entire back-end process as well. If you're building a service, you should be using Google servers, Google's compute engines, Google's virtual machines, Google's cloud functions, Google's databases, Google's cloud nets, Google's VPC networks, and all of this should be going through Google Fiber. Basically, if a product or service has any association with tech at all, these companies want a part of it. And you can't really blame them. They want to constantly grow bigger and bigger, so they're trying to control every industry that they can think of, from semiconductor design to thermostats. But here's the ironic part of it. To truly continue growing indefinitely, the key is not isolation. The key is collaboration, and this is precisely what Microsoft has come to realize. You see, it wasn't that long ago that Microsoft also had this same mindset of conquering everything. By 2000, they had hit two products out of the park, Windows and Microsoft Office. These products revolutionized not just the computer space or even the tech industry. These products revolutionized the entire world permanently, and this gave Microsoft such a massive ego. They felt that they could conquer anything and everything, and to some degree, this was true. They could put out crappy products like Internet Explorer and end up controlling 95% of the market simply because of their influence and control. This false sense of superiority led them to the email space, the search space, the messaging space, the video conferencing space, the gaming space, the music space, and who knows what else. But eventually, Microsoft reached an impasse. They kept throwing crap at the wall, but nothing was sticking. In fact, the crap that stuck earlier was starting to fall down as well. Chrome was destroying Internet Explorer, Gmail was obliterating Hotmail, the iPod was humiliating the Zune, the PlayStation was killing the Xbox, and MSN Messenger, well, that was going full-on extinct. For the first time in their history, Microsoft felt that people didn't actually want their new products. But maybe that was just bad luck, so they continued pushing. They bought Skype, they launched Bing, and they entered the smartphone space. But once again, they got annihilated. Their stock had stagnated for 17 years. Their CEO, while a nice guy, was also a meme and hated by shareholders, and public sentiment against Microsoft was worse than ever. Microsoft needed change, and they needed it desperately. Enter Satya Nadella. If you were asked if you want to be the CEO of Microsoft, what would you say? Even those of you who don't want the job would probably be selling your butt off. After all, you only need this job for like 60 days and you'd be set for life. But Satya didn't even try to sell himself to the board. When they asked him if he wanted to be CEO, he replied, quote, "Only if you want me to be CEO." Most boards would decipher this as a lack of enthusiasm and move on to the next candidate. But somehow, Satya would end up getting the job, and he would spread this humble mentality across all of Microsoft. His first order of business was scrapping off all of the crap on the floor. He shut down dozens of sectors like their smartphone business. He replaced the worst OS of all time, Windows 8, and he replaced Internet Explorer with Edge. But all of this was to just cut the fat on the consumer side. Really, he didn't even want to pursue the consumer side. The reality was that Google, Facebook, Apple, and Amazon had destroyed them in this market. And unlike Microsoft, people actually liked these companies, at least at the time. So Satya decided to give consumers a break from Microsoft. He basically made Windows and Office free for end users and got out of their way. In the meantime, Satya decided to attack an up-and-coming market, cloud infrastructure. At the time, AWS was really the only player on the market, and while they were excellent, they were also as expensive as iPhones. So Satya decided to focus his efforts on the budget cloud market. And today, Azure blows AWS out of the water in terms of cost. In fact, Azure is up to 5 times cheaper than AWS. Satya also put aside Microsoft's pride and started offering Linux options because that's what enterprise customers wanted. For many companies, this was simply an offer they couldn't refuse. A cloud platform from a reputable company that ran Linux and was substantially cheaper than AWS was a no-brainer. But the cloud was just the beginning. Satya was intent on tailoring Microsoft's products to the needs of enterprises. A great example of this is Microsoft's acquisition of LinkedIn. LinkedIn has become the go-to place for recruiters and hiring managers. Satya also made the decision to ditch Skype and build a new video conferencing solution just for enterprises, Microsoft Teams. And today, Teams is looking to overtake Zoom. At this point, Microsoft is no longer a consumer business. In fact, consumer-based revenue accounts for the smallest portion of Microsoft's revenue. Last quarter, for example, Microsoft made $16.5 billion from productivity and business processes, $20.3 billion from intelligent cloud, and only $13.3 billion from personal computing, and that includes Windows, Bing, Surface tablets, and the Xbox. In other words, Microsoft can shut down their entire consumer business and they would still be a trillion-dollar company. But that doesn't mean that Microsoft is giving up on or exiting the consumer space by any means. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Now that Microsoft is no longer reliant on revenue from consumers, they can hit the consumer space harder than ever before. But Microsoft can't just revert to their old strategy though. If they do, it won't be long before they're in the same position that they were in 10 years ago. See, the key isn't to try to replicate the success of the iPhone or Chrome or Facebook. The key is to build upon these hits and make them better. In fact, you could argue that this is what made these products themselves so successful in the first place. The iPhone made cell phones better, Chrome made browsers better, and Facebook made social media better. The problem with companies trying to expand to everything by themselves is that they rarely make said industries better. The Zune did not make MP3 players better, and the Windows Phone did not make smartphones better. Such products are simply alternatives that companies assume that people will buy just because it's associated with a given brand or ecosystem. This is basically the definition of what Google and Apple are doing right now. But as Microsoft found, this strategy doesn't work forever, and that's why they're not making the same mistake again. Instead of trying to create yet another browser and convince developers and users to switch, Microsoft embraced Chrome and addressed its pain points. They made the browser more efficient and slashed its atrocious RAM usage. With 60 tabs open, Chrome gobbles up 3.7 gigabytes of RAM, and Firefox gobbles up 3.9 gigabytes of RAM, but Edge only uses 2.9 gigabytes of RAM. Microsoft isn't hell-bent on trying to get you to use Bing either. You can switch your default search engine to Google within a matter of 7 seconds. You also get the power of the Chrome Web Store while not giving up the power of Microsoft's classic products like the Office Suite and Outlook. So you get the best of both worlds. Microsoft is using the same approach when it comes to Bing as well. Instead of trying to force Cortana down people's throats, they decided to partner with something that's already working, ChatGPT. And by the looks of it, people are excited for a Microsoft product for the first time in a long time. The new Bing was able to get 1 million people onto the waiting list within just 48 hours. And it's just a matter of time until these collaborative moves start hitting their bottom line. At the end of 2021, Microsoft was able to overtake Apple and become the world's largest company. But you probably didn't even hear about this because Microsoft didn't do anything particularly cool. And I think this is really the story of the new Microsoft, the background juggernaut. In the end, Microsoft is no longer trying to constantly score winners product after product because that's a loser's game. Consumer sentiment changes all the time, and it's impossible to always be the most desirable company with the most desirable products. But what is sustainable though is associating yourself with up-and-coming winners and just trying to get a small portion of that pie for yourself. This strategy will never yield in slam dunks because the main product, whether it be ChatGPT or Linux, will always outshine what you're doing. But at the same time, you'll also never end up like Yahoo or AOL. If ChatGPT's time in the limelight is over, no worries. You have hundreds of other winners that you also bet on. There's a saying in the stock market, time in the market always beats timing the market. Most companies are trying to time the market. Meta, for example, is trying to hit the next GameStop short squeeze with the metaverse. Apple is busy chasing the AR, VR, and EV markets. And Google thinks that they can hold their ground against thousands of new AI options. Meanwhile, Microsoft is just investing in the S&P 500. It's not flashy or particularly interesting, but over the long term, not even Warren Buffett is able to hold up against it. And that's why I think Microsoft is the strongest tech company in the world. Flashy products from Meta and Apple may excite the press, but in terms of long-term sustainable growth, Microsoft is the real winners. But that's just what I think. Did you realize just how well Microsoft was doing? Comment that down below. Also, drop a like if you wish more companies gave up their ego, at least partly. And of course, consider checking out our Discord community to get future video ideas and consider subscribing to see more questions logically answered. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.